Hi, today we'll be looking at examples of the blockade and getting rid of the blockade. So in this position we have this king in the way because he's in the square of the pawn. For up, for to the right, yeah, this king is totally in the square. That's the first thing you must always consider. So we have to use our king to get it out the way. Now we don't go here because then the black king goes here. So our king cannot go to d5 because black king goes to d7. And when the kings are in front of each other and it's our move, well, then he's always going to copy us. King c5, king c7. We can't allow this copying to happen because it's blockaded. So another thing is if we try to push our pawn, it's not going to work because he's in the square. And he will also just use that time to blockade the pawn. And that's a total draw. So after king e6, now there's no easy way for the king to blockade the pawn. You can't go to d7, that's illegal. His only move to blockade this pawn is king to d8, but then we just move king d6, and then he has to move out the way again. King c8, king e7, king c7. Now we push our pawn up, and this is a guaranteed promotion. If it was black to move, then it's the same thing. If he goes king d7 to blockade the pawn, then we move king d5. He's forced to move out the way. King e7, king c6, and as we saw before, this pawn's going to promote. King e8, king d8, king d6, and this is a guaranteed promotion. This position looks similar to this new position looks similar to the ones we saw before, where we just push the king to c7, and then the pawn promotion is guaranteed because the barrier guarantees the safety of the pawn, but there is a trick. This king is going nowhere, literally, because he's in the corner. For example, if king a7 is the only move. If king b8, then we just push b6. Oh, but you see, that's the stalemate I was talking about, because after king a8, king c7, and that's a draw. So the strategy is after king b8, king b6, king a8, king c7, and now with king a7, then b6, he's in check. So he goes king a8, b7, a7, king a7, and then we just promote to a queen, and that's a checkmate. But that's one of the stalemates you have to avoid. After king a7, king c7, king a8, and now not b6 because that's stalemate. The barrier of the king and the pawn puts the black king in stalemate. So we can't move there. So after king a7, king c7, king a8, king b6, king b8, king a6. Now king a8, because if king c8, then king a7, and then this is guaranteed, this promotion. So after king a8, b6, king b8, and it looks like our pawn is blockaded, but after b7, he cannot play king b9. That's an illegal move. He has to move out the way to king c7, king a7, and then we promote the pawn. In this other position with white to move, it looks like it's also hopeless because after king c4, king c6, king d4, king d6, king e4, king e6, it looks like our king is blockaded and we're not going to make any progress. But after we move our pawn, then it's his turn again. So after after d3, king c6, king e5, and this blockade is removed. King d7, king d5, king c7, king e6, and this pawn is going to promote. Just do that same procedure all over again. And here's a finish. So king d8, king d6, king c8, and we have to push our pawn now. d4, king d8, d5, king c8, king e7, and it's guaranteed. Here is a position that looks like the one that we just finished. So after king e4, getting in front of the king, king d6, king d4, king c6, king e5, and he has to move. It's interesting to note that king d4 also works, because if king d6, where our king looks blockaded, we just push the pawn, and king c6, king e5, and it's the same position as before. But here, we cannot play in this position king d4 because of king d6. So that move doesn't work. We have to play king e4, and now we have king d6, king d4, king c6, king e5, and the pawn promotes. The most important thing is that you cannot ever let his king get in front of yours, but you can get in front of his. What do I mean? That you have to get in front of his king when it's his turn. So for example, king e4, king d6, king d4, his turn, king c6. You don't do this because it's pointless. At this point you can convert to what you originally wanted to do, king e5, and the pawn promotes. So in this position, that's what you have to avoid. You have to avoid that trap. So if king e4, king e6, and you are blockaded, king d4, king d6, there's no progress that's going to be made. King c4, king c6, d4, king d6, and the pawn is blockaded. So what you have to do is try something else. But if you try king f4, king d6, king e4, king e6, and you're blockaded again. Actually, this position is a draw. With black to move, it's still a draw, but he cannot go onto any of the 6 ranked squares because the king will copy him. So he has to stay on the back rank, on the 7th rank, king d7. Then if king d4, king d6, king e4, king e6, and the white king gets copied, and there won't be any progress. So it's a draw with either white or black to move. Here we employ the same strategy. We get in front of the king and force him to move. King g4, king f6, king f4, king e6, king e4, king d6, king d4, king c6, king e5, and this pawn promotes. But you have to avoid the trap of king f4, king f6, where you are the one that's blockaded. And here we have a problem because we don't have any pawns. He has 1 pawn and he's about to promote. So are we even in the square? That's the first thing to consider. It's 5 squares to promotion, and there's 5 squares to the sides. We're not in the square, so with one move that we play, we are in the square again. King b3, king b2, or king b1 are our moves. If it was black to move, the pawn goes there to g5. There are 4 squares left to the end, and as you can see, we would not be in the square, so we have to move. That's his threat. He's going to push the pawn. But we have to be careful because if we push our king to b3, he's going to play king b5, and just like we saw before, we are going to lose after king c3, king c5, king d3, king d5, king e3, king e5, king f3, king f5, king g3, king g5, and this is a loss because after the king gets out the way, king h3, then king f4, and the black pawn promotes. What we have to play is king b2 because after king b5, we don't play king c3 or even king c2, those lose, because after king c2 he plays king c4 and you are the one that loses. But we play king b3, blockading his king. After the kings go all the way here, it's hopeless for black because the black king is blockaded. If he tries to push his pawn, then that is also hopeless. King c3, king c5, king d3, king d5, king e3, king e5, king f3, king f5. And after king g3, it's obviously a draw. So that's a trap to watch out for. And it's interesting to note that king b1 loses because of king b5, and if king c2 now, king c4, so it's a loss. So this position, we have to see if this king is in the square. He is in the square. We have to protect the pawn. king f5, and now the black king can go to e8 or f8. If king e8, king e6, king d8, trying to blockade the pawn, but then d7 and we promote. So he has to play king f8. Now there's another trap. We can't play king e6 because of king e8. And after d7, king d8, king d6, that's stalemate. But always oppose the king. King f8, king f6. And now with king e8, king e6, king d8, d7, and we win. So it's always important to oppose the king. And here we have an issue. We have to see if the king is in the square of the pawn. Yes, he is. We have to rush to its protection. We can't just walk it itself because he's in the square, so he'll capture the pawn. It takes 3 moves to get next to the pawn, so he has 3 moves also. 1, 2, 3. The king can get as close to c6, and that means that after, for example, king c2, king e7, king c3, king d6, king c4, king c6, it's a draw. So does white draw? Well, he has another route. After king c2, king e7, king b3, king d6, we don't play king c4, king c6 is a draw. d5, king b6, king b4, it's a total draw. But after king d6, we play king a4. Now there's no way for the black king to blockade our white king, which is his defensive strategy. So king c6, king a5, and this pawn promotes. Lastly, this is from a game Gligoric Fischer played in 1959. And Gligoric just played king c4. Now, we saw in one of the positions, we analyzed that if king c7, king c5, and if Fischer tries to blockade king b7, king b5, king a7, king c6, and the pawn's going to promote. So he doesn't play king c7, and he doesn't play king b7 because of king b5. He doesn't play king d7 because king b5, king c7, king a6, and the pawn promotes. But what he does play is king b8, just waiting, because if king b5 now, king b7, and the king is blockaded. And that's it for the strategy of the blockade. If you like this video, please give it a like. You can also donate. The link is in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.